Warning, this episode contains graphic language and denial-free elections, self-actualized dragons, loving families, and as always, teen angst. Also, there will be spoilers for chapters 37 through 43 of Brisingr, Book 3 of the Inherent Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who also doesn't like the constraints of the same old schedule day to day. I prefer to bask in the sun and judge those around me.
That's true. I'm Jacqui Lanier, and is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where the gods are totally real and prove their existence in the physical world, but we still have our doubts. We're just asking questions, you know?
I've never doubted Sindri in my life.
That's true. We have doubts about all the gods except Mama Sindri.
A muddy little god. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in the show notes. If you can't or just don't want to, we totally understand. Just ask that you would please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a huge difference.
That's true. And as always, visit us at isthisjustfantasypod.com. That's the website I made for us to archive our episodes, sell our merch, and post pictures of our faces from a very goofy photo shoot we did early in season 2. It's a wild ride if you want to visit that website. But before we tackle the wild ride of these 7 whole chapter summaries, I want to take a quick look back at the absolute smorgasbord of things that happened in our last episode. We kicked off with Eragon and Trondheim getting angsty and listening to the clan's efficient bureaucracy, but it's not all sullenness and debates, because the real boss bitch of this clan meet, Eorun, is flirting openly with our boy. Eragon can tell she's a real operator, a real like Olivia Pope type, but he and Auric are watching out for Nato, who is the anti-Varden contender for the throne. Eragon survives an assassination attempt and finds some loot linking the assassins to Asweld and Rock Onwin, so he vows revenge. You're welcome, Dane.
Revenge!
that was for you, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Then we smash cut to our first Saphira POV. She's taking a leisurely morning flight when she senses danger approaching Eragon and wishes she could protect him. She goes full vicious dragon rage.
Burn it all down, kill everybody.
Yes, and from her vantage point flying around, she spots Roran returning to the Varden's camp and can tell something went wrong on their last mission. All these men are just out here ruining her vacation time. And I'm just like, protect your peace, girl. Meanwhile, Roran and Katrina continue to have the healthiest relationship in fantasy when they share some pillow talk again, reflecting on Roran's PTSD. Katrina encourages him to talk through why he's ashamed to feel, and she emphasizes that Roran's ordinary courage in the face of battle is what makes him extraordinary. And on that beautiful sentiment, we cut back to CSI clan cases. With the immediate aftermath of the assassination attempt, Eragon is hiding out to throw off his enemies, attending a subterranean funeral while Auric hits the streets. And Auric continues to reign supreme in the secondary character rankings. That night, he lays out his evidence and he's got his receipts ready to expose Asweld and Rock Onwin. And cut to the clan meet. Gannel is that day's HDIC, and he wants to know what the fuck is up with the rising tensions and like gathering armies in Trondheim. Auric's masterful speech denounces the dwarves' history of isolationism and urges support for Eragon, using the assassination attempt to support his argument. Auric's flawlessly executed plan leads to the banishment of an entire clan, which is as eerie as hell.
So cool.
Yes, and the clan chiefs unanimously vote for the next leader's election in just 3 days' time. I wonder what we're going to talk about on this episode.
Who knows?
Yes, and we ended this at the last episode back with Roran being assigned to a new captain who's much higher on the asshole index than Redbeard was. And as they start their mission to liberate a certain village, Roran's strong hammer senses start tingling, and he formulates a wild plan which succeeds in defeating the Imperial scum and raising Roran's personal single fight body count to almost 200 enemy soldiers. But apparently individual feats of heroism don't get you a pass to break the law, and Edric charges Roran with insubordination. So we ended last episode with Roran accepting his fate and preparing to return to the Varden as a prisoner. So apparently he's just a saint. He's Jesus.
Yeah.
Are you ready to find out what Naswada's about to do with his ass, Dane?
I don't know. I'm kind of scared for her boy. I think she's scared of Roran. We've seen this.
Yeah.
So I hope this episode's title isn't bad foreshadowing.
I mean, Dane, you picked this episode's title.
Oh, man. I just hope it doesn't bode well for
Dane,
bad things ahead.
You wrote it. We had several options. This is the one you liked.
I'm glad that you agree that we're both very worried about the title of this episode. But it does have me thinking, though, which of the characters in this book, because, like, you know, Roran's about to be in trouble.
Yes.
Which of the characters in this book do you think might end up in jail?
Oh.
Like, you know what I mean? Because obviously, aside from Roran and Sloane, who is out, he's out well. He's serving time.
Oh, serving time. Yeah, sure. In this, like, beautiful, idyllic nature walk with, like, animals bringing him food. Sorry.
Look, the
I
haters are
digress.
very upset about it, all right? But
yes, that's right.
other than those two,
Okay.
oddly in the same family, don't know what that says.
I think Roran's just trying to, like, make Katrina feel a sense of home by being a criminal.
Criminal.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, of all the characters, you can pick any of them.
Yes.
Except for those two.
Okay.
Who do you think would end up in jail?
Okay.
Like night out on the town, maybe, or I don't know, doing a crime of some sort.
I do like that. I would say probably Arya.
Arya?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all,
okay.
she has a track record. She's got a rap sheet.
She
was famously in prison
Yeah, that's true.
when we met her.
She has broken the laws of our just and
breaking the
rightful
law.
King Galbatorix.
Yes, and then the last time she was like out loose in the Empire, she was just like, sorry.
The phrasing of
Sorry.
that. But she was out loose in the Empire.
She was loose. She was wearing a dress, Dane. She was disguised to look like a human. The last time she was doing that, remember, she got assaulted by all those dudes and like very forcefully shut their shit down.
That's
I feel
true.
like that is just the kind of like simmering tension that is going to get her to break the law very visibly and get thrown back in jail. I think they'd have a hard time throwing her in jail.
It's like manslaughter.
Nearly impossible, but
Yeah.
I do think she's definitely going to break some laws.
Yeah.
I don't think she has any compunction
So
about it.
manslaughter, or resisting arrest,
Yes.
assault on a police officer.
For sure.
Arya's getting the whole rap sheet.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I think Helen
Okay.
is the next one.
Yes. That
Because
makes sense.
I think Helen is going to go immediately into white collar
Smuggling.
crime. Yeah. She's
Cooking the books.
Yes. She's going to evade taxes.
Oh, her for sure.
Yeah, she's
What does she owe the government, Dane? She already gave her life savings to support the Varden.
Exactly.
She's justified. I'm on her side.
the only other one I can think about is like Albrecht. I think like
Just because he's a degenerate. Oh no. It's gotta be Nolfravel.
there we go.
He's
That kid.
yes.
And didn't he go with
He's a troubled teen.
He went with the sailors, right?
No.
Did
I think
Norfolk go with the sailors?
he's probably still around.
Okay.
Maybe he
Stabbing
did.
someone? I think he might
mean,
have gone with the sailors.
He was definitely developing a little gambling problem.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Bridget let him out of her sight though.
Oh, that's true. He was too young.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the other kids went.
He's a troubled teen though, so
Yeah.
I think
He's doing something.
yeah, I could totally see
Running
that.
with some
yeah,
bad-
because I love that our first two choices are who do you think would be a criminal? Oh, the women.
Well, I don't trust Albrecht. I think he's
I know you don't.
He's something up with that blonde, quiet man.
He
don't
seems nice to me. He's Horst's son. He's one of the Horsts.
I know, but there's always one bad one in the bunch. I'm just kidding. Well, on that note, I think we should move on to the book.
What's actually in the book,
Yes.
or our assumptions about who's
But I am
gonna get
loving
locked up.
I am loving these. I want to keep doing this.
the
This is fun.
questions?
Yeah.
I'm into it. Yeah.
All right. That takes us to chapter 37, Message in a Mirror. And we start this episode where I think we all want to start, to be
Yes.
honest, with a Saphira chapter.
Yes.
It starts with her basking in the sun and thinking about how slow the Varden is, and that she's really not a night owl, and that the constraints of a constant routine are really grinding her gears.
Yes.
She's more of a go with the flow lady.
Oh my God.
Maybe judge the best invite before deciding. Like, right? Like she wants to.
I'm definitely with her on that. Make
Yeah.
too many commitments. Nobody's going to be like that mad if you have to cancel one invitation. I mean, she's a fucking dragon. Nobody's going to be mad at her.
She definitely has multiple like things she's gonna go to, and then
Yes.
doesn't go to any of them.
Only thing I don't agree with her on here is that I definitely am a night owl. So, Saphira, come on.
Yeah, me and Saphira have this in common.
Get with the crowd. We don't do rise and grind girl. Protect your peace.
Protect your peace. She is cold-blooded, though, so
That's
that might
true.
help. She's the best. But anyway, she mentions that she's seen Thorn in her scouting.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting what she names him in her head. She calls Thorn Stunted Thoughts Red Scales Thorn.
Interesting.
And I just don't know how she knows that he has stunted thoughts. Is it like the special growth? You know how he's like absurdly larger than he should be?
Yeah.
Like, or is it interpersonal? I can't tell.
Yeah.
And I don't remember her talking to him because of they can't open themselves up because of the magic.
Yeah.
So I wonder about that.
And that is weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just like a classic girls mature faster than boys situation, and she's just like fucking exhausted by it.
You know what? 100%.
I get it, girl. Been there.
Nasawada and the elves apparently freaked out when Saphira reported she saw Thorn.
Oh yeah.
The description is hilarious. She calls them squawking birds.
Yeah.
And says they wanted like Bloodgarm to ride her after that.
yeah.
And she just flat out refused.
I like that.
It's so funny because I'm picturing the scene with like Saphira sleeping and being like, nah, keep that horny furry away from me. It really puts in perspective how Saphira and Eragon's relationship is so different from every other humanoid with Saphira.
Yes, for sure.
She just does not care about it.
Cannot be bothered about anybody else.
But she's rudely awoken from her beauty sleep by some dudes yelling, and she's pretty annoyed at the two legs fighting, so she decides to count to 33.
Very
because
specific.
she practices anger management like
Yes.
a boss.
Yes.
But ultimately, Nasawada wakes her up to talk in secret. And the first thing Saphira does is just send all her annoying feelings at Nasawada for having her sleep ruined. She's
Yes.
like, you get this.
Yes.
You should feel this.
You know exactly how pissed off I am.
But Nasawada's pretty upset and explaining that she has a classic human on Urgle hate crime on her hands.
shit.
She's clearly upset about the ugliness of it all and feels trapped. And it sounds like she's most upset that her soldiers have this much hate in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's pretty bleak.
it's really gross. And also it seems that Nasawada is also struggling with some similar feelings toward the Urgles, which is making this even more challenging.
Yes.
And she, like, her childhood was full of stories about the Urgles, and she thinks of her father's being slaughtered by an Urgle,
Yeah.
and like in the war so far, what she's seen. So they haven't made the best impression upon her.
No, her
But still.
position like makes sense given her history, but for what she's trying to do, it's definitely
Yeah.
a tough roadblock, I think, to try to get past.
It seems tough.
Yeah.
But Saphira to the rescue. She's a boss, and she tells Nasawada that she can grow beyond the limits of her race.
Hell yeah.
And that most of the time, it is the great leaders that do this in history to change other people's way of thinking.
I loved this. I was like, yes, Saphira.
Preach. She goes on to say that strife is to be avoided in this time period where there is so much at stake, and reminds Nasawada that at one point, the dwarves and elves were dragons' most hated enemies.
Yeah.
And Saphira really is just the best, right?
Yes, yes.
She doesn't ever miss. Okay.
No.
All right. She is the Taylor Swift of the Eragon world.
She cannot miss.
She's writing bangers. She's spreading good vibes.
Oh my god, and she's a billionaire.
Yes,
Don't forget,
she's a vicious
billionaire.
boss queen.
Yes.
Yeah. And hold on. I think it's just the fan cast has been great. I just want to officially put it, Taylor Swift is Saphira.
Yes, it's perfect. Taylor Swift would be perfect for anything. Of course. Sorry, I'm riled. But I think she'd be especially perfect to like voice and maybe even act as Saphira. We know she can do motion capture. Like I need this. I need my girl Taylor. Come through, Taylor.
Hasn't motion capture burned her before?
Shh. Put her in a bad light, she would say.
Oh,
she knows.
nice.
We stand a self-aware queen. Like Saphira.
Yeah. Well, Nasawada thanks her for her wisdom. Thank you, Taylor. And Saphira's internal response is just to be amused.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, but you two legs are dumb. So with a sick pep talk from this fucking dragon, Nasawada stands tall and explains that Eragon has contacted her and she can go to Trondheim.
Yes.
And it is perfect because Saphira is like, bye.
Yes, yeah.
Instantly roars, shoots fire, and just literally opens her wings and is like, I'm leaving.
Yes, dragon excitement is terrifying to behold, it sounds like.
Yeah, everybody's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yes.
But before Saphira can terrify any more of the army with her
Yeah.
roars and fire and flying, Nasawada tells her of the assassination attempt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. She doesn't need any more fury.
Because I think Naswada's maybe trying to get her head bitten off.
Yeah. Saphira immediately loses all of her anger management tactics and her zen of the art of leadership tips and instantly starts ranting about mass murder
Jesus
and about how
Christ.
Eragon is only in danger when she is absent. She's just like, can I get the hell out of here? And then Swada's like, fine, go.
Goodbye.
But please come back. We will all die if you do
Yes.
not. So Saphira flies off, keeping herself focused on the revenge
Yes.
she is going to do and thinking about how great she is. I loved every moment of this chapter, and frankly, I want more.
Yes, I'm so ready to keep the Saphira POVs coming. She's so fun.
She's like, I'm just beautiful.
I just am crushing it, aren't I? It's like, yes, Taylor, you are. That takes us to chapter 38, 4 Strokes Upon the Drum. And buckle up for some more Game of Dwarven Thrones, Dane, or
Yeah.
Game of Stones.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay. Because we're back with Eragon and we fade straight into the action of the vote for king. And the votes are flying between Auric and Nado, with the two chiefs tied, then Nado pulling ahead, and Eragon all the while super annoyingly whispering the live count to Auric, like his foster brother is not paying more attention to this than he's ever paid to anything in his life.
Auric for sure is like, okay, shut up.
We get it. We
Shut
get
up.
it.
I am literally thinking. Just stop.
I have got this. I just picture Eragon with this like big colorful chart behind him on a green screen with like little gems stacking up as the chiefs cast their vote. He's like,
love that.
live count update. Orc's like, bud,
Yeah.
we know.
We know, dude.
Yes. So with the count tied at 5-5, we have 2 dwarves left to cast votes. A rando we do not need to care about, and Iorun, the lady dwarf that likes to sexually harass Eragon.
Well, mythologically and historically based sexual harassment. So at least he's learning while he's being harassed.
Oh, man. I hate that she's fun.
She's pretty fun.
Harassment is bad.
Yes.
She's fun as a character.
We would like to firmly be against harassment.
Yes, that's correct. But with the final vote, she makes an oddly seductive speech about how she knows the dwarves must join. Is that just my vibe I was catching from that? I think she's
I think
like,
that's just what we're picking up out of this book.
that could be true.
I think it is us.
It seems like she's trying to be like alluring and mysterious about it. It's very strange.
Paulini clearly likes writing about her.
Yes, for sure. Have established that. But she's talking about how she knows the dwarves must join in on the fight against Gal to have any hope of survival. So she chooses our boy Auric as king, and the party is on. Except for Nado, who is pissed, but I doubt we're ever going to hear about that guy again.
Well, if we do, we're going to pretend like we don't.
That's true.
Oh, no, that's Vermund.
Damn. That's the banished one. This guy just lost.
Well, you and me can do it to
did-
Nado.
We didn't like him. He stole some of Auric's votes.
Yeah,
I
it was a
wasn't impressed by
Nado for
that.
me. God. I'm sorry, everybody.
Of all your bad jokes, Dane, I weirdly like that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is why we have a podcast.
We've been here too long.
Yeah. How's a flat circle, Jackie?
So Auric gives a brief speech dedicating himself to the welfare of his race. All the clans pledge themselves to him, and then Auric, Eragon, and the rest of the new king's entourage head out to start planning the coronation for the next day. Then they hear the 4 drum beats from this chapter's title, which are the signal throughout the Bior Mountains that a new king has been chosen and they must gather for the coronation. And these drums sound wild. I love to read about this. Each one is 50 feet across, and it's somehow just dawning on Eragon that maybe the dwarves like build gigantic shit so that they feel bigger, Dane. And truly, I mean, this is a little goofy, but like I feel like coupled with his last scenes, like his emotional intelligence is going through the roof on this visit to the dwarves. Like he's really being insightful about like Gloomra and the funeral and the dwarves and their entire culture and motivations. I'm proud of him.
It's pretty funny that it just dawns on him now because like he has stayed here for a significant amount of time before.
Yes.
And he's been here for a week.
Yes, and in the writing, which I love because it just gives us more and more opportunities to see all the cool dwarven shit, but he spends most of his time wandering around marveling at all the cool and giant stuff. You're like, well, he got there eventually.
He just pulls down his hoodie and he's like, wait. Whoa. Oh.
Yes, exactly. That is how I'm picturing it. Love this journey for him.
I'm so glad he's growing up.
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
But Eragon asks Auric for his permission to go find Saphira stat, and he insists on addressing his foster brother formally as king, which seemed to put a little like odd dynamic in the air between them. Again, that could just be me picking up that vibe,
Yeah.
but like Auric was like, bro, you'll always be my bro. Call me Auric. And Eragon's like, you're kinglyship,
I
highness, sir.
I think this is supposed to be the beginning of Eragon making better decisions than even the smarter people around him.
Okay.
I think this is supposed to be a signal that Eragon might not have caught up to everything like taxes and border disputes, but what
Yes.
he is starting to get in something that he's been around, and he's been around Nasawada, who's the best at PR.
That's true.
I think he's starting to get that like he is different, and like if he is like he needs to respect people's titles.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
I think you're right that Oren is not as enthused about this, but I think this is where Eragon I think is supposed to be right.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But he is absolutely itching to get to Saphira. We don't dwell in that
Yeah,
tension
who-
for very
who cares
long.
about that?
Yes. So as soon as he's dismissed, the chapter ends with him running towards the entrance of Farthen Door, like ditching his guards far behind. He's like, bye, bitches. I gotta go.
And that takes us to chapter 39 reunion, the smallest chapter. I get all those weird small chapters.
You're welcome.
Having ditched his guards, Eragon sprints faster than Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible movie, jumping over some doors to get into his way.
Yeah.
I imagine his arms are wide open and he's smiling like a maniac.
Yes.
In my mind, this whole scene is kind of like slow-mo.
100%.
Yeah, and Eragon does have a moment of anxiety about being so deep under the stone, but it all goes away as he instantly feels Saphira's mind touch his, and they plural roar and yell at each other
Yes.
as though their minds are completely meshed together. This chapter's funny. I
loved it.
could go in more detail here, but the general gist is Eragon thinks Saphira looks glorious and beautiful because of course she
loves
does. But Saphira is exhausted.
Yeah.
We learn she's only stopped for water once and has not sleeping or eaten for 3 days.
That's crazy.
She's insane.
Yes, she's a beast.
Yeah. As they walk into the mountains, Eragon catches her up on the politics. She clearly doesn't care about in this section.
And here we thought she'd be so interested in all the election.
Nope. And
No.
the public works program to get the gem repaired.
Oh, yes.
But of course, Saphira just wants to talk about the assassination attempt
Yep.
and how this always happens to Eragon.
Yeah.
It's a nice moment.
She's not wrong.
Yeah. I will say I'm truly perplexed at this. They end up laughing together at a joke Eragon makes
Yes.
that I really, truly do not get. I read it like 5 times, and Saphira thinks it's so funny she hiccups.
Yes.
And it's kind of a weird and small chapter, but it ends nice. I
I
think
think the whole thing's nice.
Yeah.
It's a little random, but like
Yeah.
I think you're just getting an insight. It almost reads to me like, you know, when you're with your like sibling or one of your oldest friends and you're like, yes, peak weird me is about to come through. Like
Yes.
that level of childhood weird that only like people who have known you forever know about.
Yeah. I don't know what that's like at all, Jacqui, person I've known for 20
Yes.
plus years.
Yes. So yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's how it reads. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, they're getting weird.
Yeah.
And they're like super punchy. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
you can definitely find some episodes of this podcast where that's the case.
Never us.
No.
Well, yeah, that's all I got.
Yes, that takes us to chapter 40, Ascension. We're still in Trondheim. We open on the morning of Oric's coronation with Eragon and Saphira standing at the ready. The ceremony starts with a fanfare of trumpets and the gathering of the clan chiefs and other VIPs with Eragon and Saphira around the reconstructed Star Sapphire. The dwarves finished their reconstruction project just an hour before this ceremony was set to start.
Seems like cutting it close.
Which feels like, yes, they were pushing this shit to the limit. And even me, like, I am a noted procrastinator and like, this does not feel okay.
No, it seems I would be so sweaty.
Yes.
I would be so worried.
Same. The stress sweat would be off the charts. We would be drowning in the stress sweat. Sorry, that's gross.
It's very gross.
So the trumpets play Oric's entrance to the coronation, which takes a solid 30 minutes. That's how it's written. Just him walking in the chamber. I'm in the business of telling nervous brides to like really take their time on their wedding processionals, really like be in the moment. And this feels excessive even to me.
Oh, good.
But he's all kitted out and Eragon is admiring his foster brother's sweet coronation fit, complete with Voland, the ancient hammer of the kings. And this really is an entrance any bride I think would be jealous of, because as Oric reaches the center of the city mountain, it begins to rain freaking rose petals from the sky
Dude,
magically.
the dwarfs are so cool.
They're crushing it. And as Auric pauses before ascending the throne, Ganel approaches him to perform the religious portion of the coronation. And while Eragon doesn't understand the Dwarvish they're speaking, the language shifts eventually to the ancient language, so we get to catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
And Ganel weaves a spell over Auric for Guntera to bestow a blessing on the new king. So this is an interesting intersection of religion and magic that I don't think we've really seen before.
I don't think so.
Yes, it's very unclear what this is. And I will be damned, probably literally, if a freaking god doesn't materialize in Trondheim at Ganel's call. Eragon observes this figure with seemingly equal parts awe and skepticism, but he does sense a completely alien and unthinkably vast new consciousness in the chamber with them. Like,
is it Sindri? Has our dirty mama come?
Mama. I mean, he called for Guntera, so it would be an interesting bait and switch if it were Sindri.
I mean, it would be just up Sindri's dirty little sleeves to pull a trick like that.
Does make sense. It is, though, what I will say is it is definitively real and in the chamber.
Okay.
And the god asks Auric 3 questions, which he apparently satisfactorily answers. We don't know what any of this is. And the god summons the ancient helm of dwarven kings upon Auric's head and has a good belly laugh before disappearing. And that's that on that. We just saw a god.
I always forget this, and it's always weird and otherworldly to me. It's really interesting. It seems it's very weird. I just didn't expect this. I never expect this, and I think this is so small that I always almost forget about it.
I was just about to say that. I think I completely forgot this before this reread. I was like, holy shit, we're in the presence of a god. I think I texted you as I was reading it. I was like, Dane, there's just a god in this world. Like, Eragon spends so much time thinking about religion, but there just is a god.
There's a god.
Yeah. So with the literal blessing of that god, Auric ascends the throne to the deafening celebrations of the gathered dwarves. Eragon and Saphira sidebar about whether or not they did actually just stand in the presence of a god.
Yeah.
Saphira seems to think, and I think this is very on brand for her, she seems to think a real god wouldn't come running to a summons, but even she doesn't seem able to explain what the fuck just happened.
Fair.
And hours of gift exchanging kick off after this as dwarves present Auric with untold riches, and he gives them gratitude rings in return. It seems a little one-sided to me, but I guess kings aren't really known for their humble populism.
They don't need it. They have divine rights. Is what they have.
I guess that's fair. Yes.
Literally.
We saw it. Cannot emphasize enough. So the end of the gift ceremony is Eragon and Saphira's time to shine again. Eragon gives Auric an enchanted protective armband, which is very cool. And then Saphira steps up for the big show, the reassembly of Isidar Mithram. It's a really, really good buildup. I think it's written with a lot of tension as she climbs the scaffolding to start her magic, and nothing happens. Absolute crickets. And we just start getting the tension in the Eragon Saphira sidebar. Like, they're just starting to be like, Eragon's like, you gonna do it? She's like, shut the fuck up. When the gathered dwarves start singing a slow and haunting song, all joining in under this cavernous mountain, it's very
do you think it's a Creed song? it's gotta be Creed, right? God. It's gotta be Creed.
Not really a thing that occurred to me, no, but I hopefully will be able to unhear this someday. But
with arms open.
No. God, the Yarling. I guess Yarling feels a little bit on brand for the dwarves. I feel like it's on brand, right? Shit. Well, as the song overwhelms Eragon with this bittersweet nostalgia.
Oh, it's definitely Creed. It's definitely Creed.
Could only be Creed.
I'm 6 feet from the edge. Okay.
God. Eragon notices that this bittersweet nostalgia is also suffusing into Saphira, and this ancient energy is beginning to stir within her. And with the final note of the song, a tidal wave of force emanates from Saphira, healing the cracks in the star sapphire and transforming Isidar Mithram back into a rose shape, while suffusing the gem with a richer red color and these streaks of gold. It gets more beautiful as she repairs it. I'm just like, damn. And the dwarves go wild. I mean, they were excited about Auric being the king, but this is next level.
Well, this moves your soul, Jacqui.
Yes, they're thrilled to have their reason to live back. And Auric gives a speech thanking Saphira for her great deed and decrees the dwarves will honor her as a master maker, engraving her name on the gem with the name of its original craftsman.
Okay, I can't separate the man from the art here. I would not want to be listed with that cold-hearted wife hater.
You did hate that too.
Yeah.
And he hated his wife, so fuck him.
Yeah, I don't like him.
Maybe they should just engrave Saphira's name over his name. Would that help?
Well, I mean, she did make it better.
I think
Everything
so.
he did, and
She did better.
made it better.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I could agree. With all these formalities taken care of, the dwarves get down to the important business of raging.
Yeah.
The party sounds lit. Only it could be lit for the dwarves.
Yes.
And late in the night, Eragon asks a very drunken Auric if that really was a god at the ceremony. I am obviously ruminating on this. Eragon,
Yes.
too, is very
You're
much
both
ruminating.
very shaken, you and Eragon.
Yes. But Auric's reply is really vague, which I found interesting, but it's clear that he and the dwarves believe deeply that the apparition they saw is the presence of their god.
Yeah.
Yes. And Auric also explains, he gets a little bit into the dwarven history of heretic kings and queens, which I thought was super interesting, but I think you're going to get into that more a little bit later.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm going to deep dive everything in here.
Amazing. And so the chapter ends with Auric admitting he had no guarantee that he'd secure Kuntera's blessing until the helm was on his head, which just feels like a pretty huge event to leave in the wait and see column when you're planning a coronation, but maybe that's just me.
I think the party planner in you is
I didn't like that at all.
very
It's
upset
I
by
need to
that.
know what happened.
Is it happening? Is it not happening?
What's our evacuation plan if people start fighting in the streets because
That's
the
so
god
funny.
didn't bless him? I need to know.
Yeah.
Do we not start preparing the food until after the helm goes on because we don't really want to waste all that product?
Oh, they're the dwarfs. They're still partying. You know?
Yes.
I was
we don't
actually
want to serve food cold. That would
Exactly.
be the problem.
I was thinking though too that the dwarfs very much would be the place where Red Rocks is. They would have an amphitheater that's super cool, I think.
100%.
Just made out of natural rock formations.
Yes, absolutely.
I love them.
Yeah,
I
me
love
too.
that chapter. And we're gonna move on because
Okay.
we'll just keep talking about dwarfs if I don't.
Yes, that's true.
Chapter 41. Word wisdom. This chapter opens with Eragon talking to Queen President through the power of magic, and Eragon tells her that the dwarfs will march ASAP.
Hell yeah.
The dwarfs.
Hell yeah, brother.
The dwarfs are going to war.
Yes.
And we get a Roran update.
Okay.
And the timelines of our stories mesh here.
Okay.
Roran has just returned from his crazy 193-person killing
how
spree.
could I forget?
Yeah, and interestingly, Nasawada leaves out that Roran has come back as a prisoner.
She's a smart girl, Queen President.
Yes. Then Eragon asks if we can see his teacher in Elsmira, and he basically gets a no.
Yeah.
Nasawada explains
Fair.
she's moving the Varden troops closer to Feinster, and they have had constant raids testing the Varden's army strength.
Okay.
And so on top of that, she's still unable to go into battle with her wounds. And the
Right.
troops need a leader.
Okay.
She's also very worried about the day-to-day morale, as the men have already started talking about Eragon and Saphira being away from the army.
Okay.
Also, there's that little thing of that constant threat of Thorn and Murtag.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then
That's no big deal, though. They could just decimate the entire army in one fell swoop.
yeah, they could attack at any moment, But Eragon pushes back. He
Yeah.
says they'll never get another chance.
Yeah.
The more they go forward with the conflict, the more unlikely she is to let them go, and he has to go. And I'm proud here because this is much less of a whiny and more logical argument
Yes.
than the last one.
Yes, for sure.
Whether you agree or disagree, it's showing some growth for Eragon. And I was thinking about this. Maybe he just watched all those dwarves' political maneuverings.
He was absorbing through osmosis. He figured some of this out.
He learned some things.
Yes.
Yeah, Nasawada fights back, saying if they delay the attack to give him time, people will die each day he's gone. And for
Yeah.
that cost, Eragon can't prove what benefits they'll get. She begs to him to see reason. She's like, please do not do this.
Yeah.
But Eragon doesn't let up, and he basically accepts these consequences, which in itself, whether right or wrong, shows maturity. He's taking responsibility. He's like, I take responsibility of that.
Yes, he's actually being really thoughtful about this and being very realistic, I think, about what it means for him to make this choice.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those arguments I think I really do see both sides of. Naswada's not necessarily wrong.
No.
And there are obviously untold threats to her and the army and the wall.
And the wall.
But Eragon's, I think, in my opinion, more right. I
Well,
would
also,
say.
Nasawada doesn't have all the information, right? If
Yes,
she knew this
that's
was
true.
another Rider and Dragon,
That's true.
I think she actually might be
That's
like,
right. We don't tell Naswada anything.
yeah, we don't tell her that. So Nasawada eventually relents and says she will delay for 3 days while they
Yeah.
capture towns around Feinster, and then she will have her men build siege engines.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
classic busy work, just occupying regions, building sieges. You got to get in there and make sure people feel like
Our podcast really is something. We're the heights of comedy, this podcast.
I thought that was good. I thought you of all people
I love it.
would
I love it.
appreciate that.
Anyway, that's amazing. She says she's going to give him 6 days, and Eragon is instantly like, nah, I'm going to need like way more time than that. And Nasawada eventually says that he can stay as long as he needs.
Dude.
Ultimately, Eragon is right. She
She's
comes
being
around.
beaten down here.
Yeah, if he doesn't learn or get something new that helps kill Galbatorix, they really are going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
And she seems defeated and resigned. It's a testament to the whole gamble of this war so far. And there really is a slim chance that they can do this. And it kind of all comes down to Galbatorix when and if he makes an appearance.
Yeah.
So they leave.
Okay.
Yay for more stump time. It's coming.
I missed stump time, Dane. That does take us to chapter 42, the whipping post.
Oh, no.
I don't know why I said that like that.
I
Too
don't-
whimsical
why
for
did
what
you
is
say
happening.
that?
Womp, 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 womp. In our first departure from the election night in Trondheim storyline, we start this chapter back with Roran. He's in the midst of being dressed down by our queen president for what happened on his last mission with Edric, and I love Naswada's like grudging, exasperated admiration for Roran. She's like, dude, you're so cool, but it is so annoying that you can't stop making me have to like work around you. She's really
Yeah, you're a problem.
yes.
Yeah.
She's really pissed that she has to punish him because insubordination is insubordination, but she's grateful that he's so strategic and effective, obviously. She decides the only traditional punishment available to her, like the only thing that makes sense with the rules of the Varden as set up, is to use 50 lashes in public. And my first thought is that with Eragon's like wards in place, how do we know the whip will actually strike him?
Well,
like,
it's actually really an interesting thought, but I think, like, you know, the horn that punctured him in that one battle?
Yes. Yeah.
I think there would have to be a specific ward against a leather whip.
Okay.
But that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Eragon's in his leather daddy phase yet, though. So
If he's like really in his leather conscious era yet, so he maybe didn't ward against this.
yeah, apparently horns and leather, the way to get to Eragon.
His two classic blind spots, horns and leather. So Naswada is telling Roran that a magician will both supervise the whipping and administer some like preliminary healing afterward to ensure the damage won't be permanent to him. So that's kind of the best he's going to get. But then Roran can't seek out any other healers after his ordeal. He's just going to have to tough it out, walk it off.
I'd still probably go to Karn and be like, hey, bro,
Be a man.
look it up.
Also, that's such a good idea because Karn could just like make it look like he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Karn is tricksy.
He's
Karn
a
could
tricksy
figure
guy.
it out.
And they're buds.
Yeah, I love that. So Roran is sent to wait under guard in a tent by the whipping post while the troops are gathered around for the like public portion of the whipping. Our favorite slattern, how could we forget, Triana, arrives to do the honors to like heal up some of Roran's initial wounds before she can declare him fit for whipping.
Oh, I bet she declares him fit for whipping.
It's just, that does strike me as an odd thing. It's like, oh, you look great and beautiful. We're going to fuck you up now. We are going to wreck you.
And they pick Triana.
Yes, of all people. Yeah, so Katrina sneaks a quick visit into this guarded tent, and she is, of course, outraged that Roran is being made to stand punishment, but he assures his wife it's necessary, and 50 lashes can only kill men with what he calls, quote, weak hearts. Not anything like our strong hammer.
Be a man.
Yes, exactly. I was like, Jesus Christ, Roran. He asks Katrina to leave the crowd before the whipping, and although she protests and she wants to be there for him, she eventually agrees that she won't watch. He's just like, girl, it's going to make it a billion times harder for me if I know that you're like out there watching it happen. It just is all around bad on bad on bad.
Yeah, and this brings up a good point. Do you think he actually needs to be punished here?
We talked about this a little bit in the last episode,
Yeah.
wondering what Naswada was going to end up doing with him.
Yeah.
I think my stance is the same. I do think if if you're in the middle of an active war campaign
Yeah.
and you're in an army, you do have to uphold your laws and your rules without any exceptions, really, without,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can see is that no one really knows what happened, so everything would be a rumor. Like, you could keep this. It would be a rumor that he did this, but I was thinking the other only option that you have, because I tend to agree with you, but the only other option I can see you could do is, like, you would discharge his old commander for making you don't want that guy leading other groups.
Yeah.
And then you muddy it, so and then still punish him, but much shorter, like 5 lashings.
Yeah.
And you like muddy the water on the confusion there and have the other guy get punished alongside him. So you wouldn't want to get lashed for not listening to your commander, but also that would then balance the scales.
Yeah,
here.
maybe punish the commander for like
Recklessly leading.
ignorance.
Yeah.
And take what, if the traditional punishment, is 50 lashes, split it between the two of them, give them 25 each. And
I think we just solved the problem.
damn, Niswata, give us a call.
Yeah.
We got you, girl.
If you need help, Queen President, we would love to
we
be your
too
aides.
could be queen presidents running a war.
No, we could just be aides.
Okay.
We would be
Fine. I get immediately excited. I'm like, oh yeah, we're great at this.
We can lead.
We could solve world peace. Give us a call,
You know-
politicians. Joe Biden, call us up. We'll figure it out. We got you, bud.
You know what we're great for?
What?
We'd be great for the council. We could sit on the council.
The council that's disbanded and has no real power. We'd crush it at that. You're right.
We would really crush it.
That's really true, unfortunately. But when the time comes for Roran's whipping, Jormungandr leads him to the post, has him strung up, and gives him a dowel to bite down on, and then we get a torture scene.
Oof.
The whipping is apparently very, very painful, but Roran gains strength from what else but thoughts of Katrina and the baby, and he's able to endure it silently. Not a peep out of this dude, 50 lashes,
He does-
like a real badass.
Just to be clear, he does let one out, but then he's like, never again.
Never again. Like a man.
Push it deep.
Be a man.
Push it deep inside,
Yes.
Roran.
We cut to Roran waking on the cot in his tent with Katrina comforting him and Triana and Angela fighting over healing protocols. Angela wins the argument by berating Triana until the sorceress storms off.
Surprise.
Yes.
I wonder if she slapped her.
Not in character at all. I don't think this time, no. And Angela proceeds with healing more of Roran's back than we were expecting, which she says she's doing at Niswata's order. So I thought that was interesting.
That is weird, yeah.
And she leaves with the appropriately kooky Angela farewell of watch out for ferrets.
I have no comments. None. No comments.
Yeah, that's our Angela.
Yeah.
So just then, Niswata comes into the tent and Katrina is snippy with our queen president. She doesn't want anyone bothering Roran, and Niswata is there to brief Roran on his next mission. So Katrina's really not happy about that.
Yeah, that Dwarven guy should have learned if you have a good wife.
He was really missing the
He was
boat
missing
here.
out. Look at what
Yes.
Katrina's doing.
Dude.
She's taking on Queen President.
She is. I love Katrina in the scene. I'm like,
she's
damn, girl,
great.
get her.
Get it. Yeah.
But Niswata is telling Roran that his next mission, insanely, is going to leave the next day. Obviously, Katrina is even more pissed now, like just ratcheting up and up. But Niswata explains that with the tensions between soldiers and Urgals at an all-time high, she needs to send a joint company out on a mission to demonstrate cooperation here. So she's promoting Roran to command this new integrated force.
Okay, hear me out. We know Nasawada is kind of worried about Roran, like
Yes.
taking power.
Yeah.
It's in the text.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Do you think she's sending him on like a series of deadly missions with plausible deniability?
Damn.
Like we've seen she is savage, she's intelligent. We know from Elva, maybe a little power hungry. Is this a play? I'm not saying that it is. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions.
Because like it would make sense, right? Because in her mind, she's probably like, I want him to succeed. But also, if he weren't to, that would solve a problem from Nasawada.
It's maybe, I guess it strikes me, one, I feel like the thing she said about being worried that Roran is like so charismatic, such a natural leader, that feels kind of like one almost throwaway line in here. It's not something that
I don't know. She followed it up with she'd have to watch him and she would have to destroy him. I
Yes.
feel like
But I guess it doesn't feel like it's coming up. What comes up more and more often is that she's like impressed by him. She likes him. She's like proud of him. She wants to make him a leader and promote him. At least that's what she's saying in most of the scenes.
Well, that's what
she says to
Is that what she's just
Eragon.
saying, Jacqui?
No, I think it strikes me as just kind of a plan with less downside than some people might imagine.
Well, I mean, Urgos and humans don't get along.
Yes.
That's going to be risky in and of itself.
Yes.
And the last 2 adventures he was on were not good. They were outnumbered, and like that's just the Varden situation.
I was just gonna say, I think
like,
that is just unfortunately the war,
Yeah.
and he's a prominent person, so I don't think she feels like it's an option to bury him in the ranks. You know,
wild.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe Nasawada isn't doing that.
I don't know. I love her here. I feel like she's.
Oh, I would like her more, I think, if she was doing that.
Of course you would.
I kind of like that calculated thing for Nasawada. So, like, either
Yeah, of
way,
course you
she's
do.
great. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess she strikes me here as like, as always, pragmatic, but with a healthy dose of like sly humor as she's giving this all to Roran, you know, like she gets a little messy, dropping the casual aside that Edric has been demoted, like
good.
we said,
Yeah.
and like we advised. And
Glad she's listening to us already.
yes, we're doing great. And Naswada says she has to promote Roran so he stops committing insubordination. So I like those 2 like little humorous things. I guess that's what strikes me is like she must feel some genuine like care and affinity for Roran, you know.
He's efficient. I mean, even if she didn't like him, he's efficient.
Yeah, but to like joke around with him, to be real with him, I think from their very first interactions, they're like, "You're a straight shooter. I'm a straight shooter. Let's roll."
Let's do this.
Yes. She's funny. She says the only person he'll have to disobey as a captain is her. And she says he better be disobeying her if he does it. He better be killing Gal himself. Otherwise, she'll kill him. Love her.
Wild.
But I like that even she's like, "Oh, I'd give you a pass. If you did it for a good reason, I'd for sure give you a pass."
But it better be.
It better be a really good reason. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So I think she understands the position he was in with Edric.
Yeah.
I don't know. But after Naswada waxes poetic about Roran's ability to rally his followers, making him the best man for this job, the chapter ends with Roran accepting his promotion despite the distress he knows it's going to cause Katrina.
And that takes us to...
Or Rachel McAdams.
And that takes us to chapter 43, Among the Clouds. We're back with Eragon and Saphira as they road trip out of the Dwarven lands
Yes.
and fly out towards the Elven lands.
Yes.
The trip is full of all of the road trip classics. They hit a tunnel that takes longer than expected.
Oh my God. Traffic.
Get a brain freeze and some hydration. Pass by an ancient castle that's seen better days and snap some mental pics. During the trip, Eragon talks a little, but mostly they look at the sights.
Yeah.
They end up stopping for the night so the driver doesn't get too sleepy on the road. But they wake at the dawn to beat the early morning traffic.
Yes.
The drive slows a bit as the weather turns and the wind exhausts Saphira, but she refuses to stop. Classic dad moves here.
So many dads, so little time.
No, they have a bit of an argument even. You know, they've been on the road trip for 2 days. Tensions are rising.
Okay.
Yeah. In all seriousness, this part's pretty cool. Saphira
Yeah.
won't stop because the ancient unbounded dragons wouldn't have stopped for the wind.
Yes.
But this mind is not... Like, this wind is not fucking around.
Yeah.
It's so bad that Eragon prays to Kuntera for help.
Wild.
First time in the book, right? I think he's like
Yeah, for
actually
sure.
prayed. Normally he processes emotions through dirt drawings and cursing at the gods.
I mean, I guess he's just maybe he's just switching to his god of choice. Like the dirt drawings maybe are just him calling to Sindri, and now he's making a little lateral move to call to Guntera instead.
We're the ones who had this wrong the whole time.
Yes, I think so.
Eragon has just been practicing Sindri religion the whole time.
Praying to Sindri through his offerings of his beautiful dirt art.
I love that. It's confirmed the Carvajallers also worship Sindri
Yes,
now. Yes,
crushed it.
Because that's pre-Dorf. He
Yeah.
started this. Wow. We really can connect all the dots. You're welcome,
That's what we're
Paolini.
here for.
The road trip catches a break, though, as his prayers seem to be answered and the wind slows as they glide over the Hatterack Desert. They have to end the drive just when they get inside to Welder Varden, as Saphira is beat and needs a break.
Yeah.
As soon as they cross the magical threshold, Eragon calls Oramus. He tries to see if he can work remotely due to the Varden's whole impending doom situation.
That.
Yeah, but Oramus refuses, just flat out refuses.
It's really rude. I feel like these executives are really just like pushing pushing in-office schedules. It's a tough break for our guy.
Yeah. So Eragon and Saphira get back in the saddle and mention something interesting.
Yeah.
They think back to the first book when Solomon said, "Listen closely, and I will tell you two things. When the time comes and you need a weapon, look under the roots of the Manoa tree. Then, when all seems lost and your power is insufficient, go to the rock of Kuthian and speak your name to open the vault of souls." And they decide if they need to go to the Manoa tree.
Yeah.
They're like, okay.
Maybe we'll give it a look if we have to be there anyway.
I mean, it's on the road, but it's on the way.
Yeah.
They talk about the possibilities of what the weapon could be,
Yes.
and the fact that it's unlikely they will find it before the war is over.
I know they're being pretty pessimistic here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, for your reunion, for that cool ass coronation, for the fact that like you saw a god and it maybe answered your prayer about the wind,
Yeah.
you're not feeling a little like wind under your wings?
Well, they are in the middle of a road trip, and it's been long, and they've been trapped together.
I guess.
So, maybe that's just what it is. This chapter ends with the road trip coming to a close as they head to Ellesmere. It was a light chapter. I got all the light chapters this
I
time.
know. You crushed it.
Yeah.
Well, it's only because your dive is going to be so deep in a moment.
Buckle up, everybody.
Yes. I do feel like it has been a while, though, since we've gotten just like a few nice light chapters.
I know, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, so I do want to get into this episode's analysis because after my failure last time, I'm back with a theme locked and loaded, Dane. I've got it.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
It's time for analysis.
Yes, in this section of chapters, I really noticed the idea of justice and righting wrongs, underscoring most of the major plot points, so let's get into it. I want to start where the section did because I'm a real fan of parallel structures that way.
Okay.
In our first interactions between Saphira and Naswada, we hear about Naswada's predicament with hanging the man who murdered their Urgal allies. I think this anecdote is included partially to prime us for Roran's whipping a few chapters later, partially to establish a fun moment of bonding between Saphira and Naswada, and partially to seed this idea of justice we're going to see recurring through the next chunk of the book. And Naswada's ready to do the difficult thing and bear the turmoil both within her ranks and within herself to right this wrong and bring a measure of justice to this like really shitty situation.
Yeah.
And I think like exploring this situation in Saphira's point of view may be a way of showing us something else about the wrongs we're going to see righted here. In general, Saphira's view on situations is very cut and dried, very black and white. We joke about it a little bit, but like she means business. Like she doesn't take no shit, and she knows what something is, should be, is not, shouldn't be, you know? So I can see how Christopher Paolini could have been trying to foreshadow some clear-cut wrongs that are going to get justice here.
Okay.
By, you know, having her frame out that very first point for us.
That makes sense.
And the next one we see has to be the most emotional. It's Eragon and Saphira's reunion. After pretty admirably bearing the wrong of their separation, Dragon and Ryder get the sweet, sweet justice of finally being back together. And you touched on this a little bit in your summary of this chapter, but I also noticed the way like their reunion is written really like cinematically and evocative. You're almost watching the scene play out. Like it feels very easy to see of the writing in these books. And for me, that really serves to highlight the writing of this clear-cut wrong of dividing two creatures who are bonded like down to their souls.
Yes. And especially with all the stuff they added in this book about Eragon almost passing out.
Yeah.
He missed her so much, reaching out with his mind for her automatically as he wakes.
Yes.
This was like amped up ahead of time before the Tom Cruise sprint.
Yes, I think it was really well set up how unjust their separation is, like how wrong it is in this world to separate a dragon and its rider. And we get that same very picturesque, emotionally focused writing throughout the coronation scene, but most compellingly, obviously, as Saphira mends the star sapphire. The haunting chorus of dwarves, the creed, the flow of thoughts between Saphira and Eragon, like the way they're sharing emotions, the tense false start, and like ultimate success of dragon magic. It again is really highlighting for me like the black and white justice of the dwarves having their cultural pride restored amid the election of a king who's going to bring their race to defend the free peoples of Alagasia. It's just like right things, justice, we're fixing shit, you know?
Yeah, there's no more confusion. This is all good.
Yes, I think so. And on top of that, there's another like smaller tie that jumped out to me during the coronation with all the pomp and circumstance and more visually just like stunning descriptions of the rose petals and the outfits at the ceremony. It got me thinking that like in a way, Oric becoming the king of the dwarves is sort of like cosmic justice, righting the wrong of Hrothgar's death. You know, like Hrothgar was cool. He never did anything wrong. He didn't really deserve to die. And like our dwarf daddy was so dedicated to the Vardens' cause that he died for it. And having his heir win a free election on the promise of rededicating their people to that same cause is just chef's kiss. Justice for dwarf daddy.
Yeah, I think Hrothgar would be proud.
Yes, friend. For me, I like that kind of similar writing style, that like emotional, evocative, very visual style ties this back to the idea of justice with those other, you know, maybe clearer examples of justice. And finally, we're not getting out of a discussion of justice in this section without picking apart Roran's punishment.
Oh, no.
In another scene that really stands out for its vivid cinematic description of something that was pretty brutal,
Yes.
we're reminded of the consequences of justice. I think this is kind of the other side of the coin here. Whether or not you agree with the Vardens' hardline legal structure, most people can get on board with the need for laws to be applied equally. And that's what we see happen to Roran here. And it's a rather gruesome bookend to the first indication we saw of righting wrongs in this section when Niswada decided to hang that murderer. So I think that just kind of puts a pin in it. Like we do need to have justice. There are so many ways it can be good, but here are two very unfortunate circumstances where if we're dedicated to applying justice equally, as we probably should be, this maybe is what's going to happen on occasion.
Well, and also the justice is like, you know, it depends on where you stand and how you feel about certain things. Sometimes justice doesn't always feel good to everybody all the time.
Yes.
That means it's being applied probably appropriately.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. So I like the way these themes that seem to revolve around questions of morality keep popping up in this book. It's something Christopher Paolini seems to have been exploring since pretty early on in the series as a whole. And I think it's a good way to show the growth of these characters as they make good on promises and take decisive action to right the wrongs in their world. Yeah. You know, to show that time has passed. But do you think I've paid my debt to the analysis gods, Dane? Are you ready to kick off your deep dive?
I'm ready. I think you did. I think
paid my blood debt.
Yes, the blood debts are paid.
Brought justice to
the blood feuds are over.
Yes.
Brought justice to the series and podcast.
You're so welcome.
Wow, you're just
That's
like
all I'm here for.
You're just like Queen President.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
With that, we're gonna head to the deep dive.
Deep dive.
For this episode, I want to deep dive into what we saw at Oric's coronation.
Yes.
Because this week we have a huge question to answer. Are the gods real? Was Guntara actually there? And does this prove the existence of the Dwarven Pantheon?
Yeah, it does. That was a super short deep dive, Dane.
All right, thanks. We can move on to the haters. Unfortunately, I don't think it proves anything,
Boo!
but it does open the door to a lot more possibilities.
I want real life in-world gods, Dane.
And fan theories. First, let's go over what we saw. Ganel, from the Priest clan, used a staff with a clear crystal on the top to hit the ground and cast a spell, the likes of which Eragon had never seen, that was focused on some element or object. After doing this, Ganel finished by asking for a blessing upon Oric and for him to be crowned king. So one thing to note before I go on, Ganel is using a staff with a crystal on it, and we know that crystals can hold magical energy. And let's not forget that that's just a few feet away from the Broken Star Sapphire, which is in pieces, but it is in very large pieces.
Yeah, in some cases, bigger than all the gems in Eragon's little belt combined.
Yes. So I think we can safely assume that there is some magical aids being used, possibly.
Okay.
Also, Ganel potentially focused on an object, maybe a gem.
Yes.
So I'm thinking there is an origin for this power.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that.
Stored up. That's why I do these deep dives.
Hey.
I think so. You don't have to.
Thank you for the finger guns,
Yeah.
Everybody listening. Finger guns guy is here.
You're welcome. Now let's quote a little after the description to get an image of this thing.
Yes.
Quote, the void outlined by the petals assumed the shape of a creature with arms and legs like a dwarf or a man or an elf or an Urgle, but of different proportions than any race Eragon had knowledge of. The head was nearly the width of the shoulders, the massive arms hung below the knees, and while the torso was bulky, the legs were short and crooked. Thin, needle-sharp rays of watery light radiated outward from the shape, and there appeared the nebulous image of a gigantic, shaggy-haired male figure of the form the petals had traced. The god, if god it was, wore nothing but a knotted loincloth. His face was dark and heavy and seemed to contain equal amounts of cruelty and kindness, as if he might veer between the extremes of both without warning. As he noticed those details, Eragon also became aware of the presence of a strange, far-reaching consciousness within the chamber, a consciousness of unreadable thoughts and unfathomable depths, a consciousness that flashed and growled and billowed in unexpected directions, like a summer thunderstorm.
I love that quote.
Yes.
This was a fun read for sure.
It's a fun read. And so reading this reminded me of the section earlier in this book when Arya and Eragon meet the spirits. Listen to this quote.
Okay.
This is what was quoted at that point. Not as long, I promise.
Okay.
A presence entered his mind, brushing aside his defenses as if they were dry leaves in an autumn storm. The creature's presence was so strange and so unearthly, he wanted to flee from it. But inside his consciousness, there was nowhere to hide. Few impressions he gleaned were so different from those he had found in the minds of other beings. They were incomprehensible. So that sounded similar to the thing at this coronation, doesn't it? Like, because one was from outside his mind, one was from inside his mind.
Yes.
I think it's possible it could be a spirit that was summoned.
Interesting.
Like maybe sorcery. Eragon says that he has never seen a spell like that, so maybe Gandalf is using sorcery.
Okay.
But I think it's possible that if it is a god, it might feel similarly alien to Eragon. How would he be able to differentiate two alien consciousnesses that he can't fathom?
That's true. It's interesting because it's just similar enough, you're right, that you could make the case maybe it's a spirit and Gandalf's a sorcerer, but there's also enough differences that it's like, how would Eragon...
How would he know?
Yeah, how could he possibly
And how could you
know?
compare two things you don't understand?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then we have a description of what it looks like. And this description doesn't jump out at me right away as reminiscent of anything in particular. But if we remember the Dwarven history we learned in the second book, that they were nomads who lived above ground until the desert pushed them into the mountains.
Yes.
Maybe there's some vague nomadic vibes in this
Okay,
image, like
yeah.
above the ground.
Yeah.
Dwarves also seem to have some connection to the Urgles, who both races have 7 toes. So maybe
right.
this is their common ancestor that like bridges the gap.
That's super interesting.
Or maybe a gray folk. Maybe both cultures have their divine history wrong and they have a common creator.
Ooh.
It would make some certain sort of sense. I don't know. If there's like one true religion in this world,
yeah.
maybe they just have it wrong. I don't know.
Maybe Rana, mother to us all, is
Yes.
really she's really been Sindri all along.
She's a dirt mommy. I think it's safe to say we don't have enough information to make a definitive answer one way or another.
Yeah.
And even Oric's answer to Eragon in this chapter can be interpreted in a few ways. Oric says it's likely as close as they're going to get to Guntera in the real world.
Yes.
And that either means it's a construction of the dwarfs for show, or it's
Yeah.
otherworldliness and unknown, but not their god, right?
Yeah.
Like either way, it doesn't really necessarily lead us to an answer.
Yeah.
It kind of creates more questions.
Yeah.
I think.
I like that, though. I think that feels realistic. Oric is like, to me, I guess my read of it is like he's presenting the idea as long as all the dwarves agree that it's meaningful.
It's as close as we're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like, what does Oric know? Like,
Yeah.
and classic Eragon never pushes and
Yeah.
follows up. So maybe Oric does know more, but we don't know.
That's true.
Which leads to the final point to bring up here. We learned in this section that sometimes there have been dwarf leaders that didn't get the blessing at all.
Oh, yeah.
Oric says, have you ever heard of the heretic kings and the heretic queens? They are Nerlin, who failed to secure Guntera's blessing as our next ruler, and yet who nevertheless insisted upon taking the throne. Without exception, their reigns were short and unhappy ones.
Yes. I actually really liked...
This is cool.
Yeah, I liked that little tidbit in there because I was like, oh, shit, yeah, what would happen?
Yeah, I want to hear about that, which is actually some of the only information we get that is kind of illuminating.
Okay.
I think with what we've seen of the dwarves, who unlike the other races seem to prize safety, efficient bureaucracy, and long-lasting grand objects over everything else, they are unlikely to allow absolute randomness in their election process.
That's a good point.
And since a mid-coronation roll of the magical dice seems like the definition of random, I don't know. I think this leads me to believe the dwarves have some assurances that it's actually divine intervention, or at least a third-party contractor they like trust giving it like a
A
look over.
lookover? Okay.
Yeah, so a little aside, this whole religion getting into our coronation ceremony is kind of an actual thing, just a little history thing.
Oh, yeah.
A monarchy is defined by the divine right to rule. So many a church and church leader have tried and often succeeded at using religious interpretation to remove or crown a king.
Yeah.
The one that comes most like vividly to my mind is when Pope Gregory VII told everyone King Henry IV didn't have the divine right to be
messy
king anymore.
little bitch.
Yeah. And King Henry actually had to beg like at the Pope's door for forgiveness
Yeah.
to get his kingship back.
Wild.
It's something that's literally kind of a fixture of this whole divine right thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Like the splitting of nations, splitting of churches
Right.
kind of happens and hinges sometimes on things exactly like this in the real world.
Yeah, and Ganel is the head of the church. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying. So
that's a good point.
anyway, back to the book. So with all that together, my personal headcanon is that Ganel and the dwarfs did call through a combination of stored energy in Ganel's crystal, the star sapphire, and the collection of the dwarven people
Okay.
to get either a sliver of the god or servant of the divine to look on them for a moment, or do something similar to what Angela did when she rolled the bones for Eragon in book 1. If a
Okay.
witch can do it, why not all of these people?
Yeah.
And the consciousness that Eragon came into contact was alien and powerful like a spirit because it was the same type of alien mind, which I already explained could be a god.
Yeah.
This is my personal headcanon, though, and I realize that that explanation does not work for a lot of people, so I can offer up one more that is very popular on Reddit by the user Mythran Dyer.
Amazing.
And I'll link his Reddit post about this
Yes.
in the show notes. He says that essentially using all the same pieces I've pointed out, that Katera did not come to the coronation, but instead it was Ganel who, through use of a magic spell, was channeling the collective sentiments of all the dwarves present. So in
Oh.
theory, which I also like this,
Yeah.
the heretic kings and queens were not crowned because they were unliked by all the dwarfs present.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Oh,
read.
I like that a lot.
I wanted to shout out this guy here because it's really
Yes.
cool. I really like that.
I
And
mean, call me just falling to recency bias immediately.
Yeah.
But I think that might be my headcanon. I kind of like the idea of like a hive mind, essentially.
I really like that take. I think in this magic system in particular, where we see so much sharing of thoughts and emotions and connection of consciousness, it makes perfect sense that there would
Yeah.
be a spell to essentially create a hive mind.
Yeah.
New headcanon unlocked.
I
maybe
like
for
it.
you?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think
Okay.
so.
So thanks, Myth Randai. We appreciate
Yes.
it.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, and that really is it for the deep dive. I couldn't find a definitive answer by the man himself, Paolini, and there isn't really much more in the text to support either case. But I did want to focus in on it and really go through it because I find this coronation ceremony extremely enjoyable and fun.
Yes.
But if you hated this,
I loved
Yeah,
your
you love it.
conspiracy theory string wall
Yeah.
on was that a god or not.
Well, but if you are listening and like, I did not like that one, you're gonna fit right in with the next
Yes.
segment. What are the haters saying?
Actually,
You should do your
well,
research,
if you
huh?
refer to
Have
the
you even
original
read it?
text,
That's
how you pronounce it.
What are the haters saying?
No, there is an index in the back,
No,
right?
this is a
Hang on.
really
So it's just a
derivative.
copycat.
This time, the haters have thoughts. But what else is new?
Yes.
Right? So I want to revisit one of that's been bothering them for quite a while. I haven't really
Okay.
talked about it. It's been bothering them since book 1.
Oh shit.
Where is Galbatorix?
I know.
Yeah. Throughout the series, starting all the way back in episode 1 of this podcast, when we covered chapter 3
Damn.
and learned from Brom about the fall of the Dragon Rider Order,
Yes.
he has been the main villain.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the one who sent Durza to capture the egg from Arya. He sent the Razak to find Brom and Carvajal. And he's the one who sent the Urgles after Murtagh and Eragon as they ran to the Varden.
Yes.
It's always been our boy Gal.
Our big bad murder wizard daddy.
Yeah, he is supposedly the most powerful mind breaker in the world.
Yeah.
And the smoothest salesman this side of the Ninor River. With an insane dragon and 100,000 men in his back, where the heck is the evil wizard king?
Yeah.
He could come take Eragon in a second,
Yeah.
kill basically everybody, start his own riders, and make them all slaves. So where is
Yes.
he?
What
Right.
is he dicking around doing when
Yeah.
that could be his life?
And I'll link where I got this in the show notes, but Christopher Paolini answered this directly in the same 2018 AMA I referenced in the last episode.
Nice.
So first, Paolini explains that Galbatorix was cautious
Okay.
and used the Forsworn, Durza, and Razak to do his dirty work.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty borne out in the evidence in the series so
Yes,
far.
for sure.
After all, it was Morzan who went after Brom when the egg was stolen.
Yeah.
It was Durza who tried to recover it from Arya, and it was the Razak that went after Brom. We've kind of gone over all
Yeah,
this,
he
right?
definitely leans on his lieutenants. He's great at delegating.
Yes, he's not a micromanager.
No.
Paolini goes on to say something that has been alluded to by a bunch of people in the series so far. Gal doesn't want to kill Saphira and Eragon.
Yeah.
He wants to capture and enslave
Yes, he would
them.
much rather have them at his service.
Yeah, plus Gal doesn't care about the people that he rules over. And I think that makes sense. Gal, he didn't clearly care about the Carvalhallers.
Yes.
As they were hung out to dry early on in the series, we heard about that.
Yeah.
Right? We had the traitors, all
Yeah.
that weird sentiment there. And then also, Gal sends Urgles rampaging through his empire, just letting them do whatever they want to the village they run into. Those aren't really the moves of a guy who worries about his countrymen.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, so it makes sense that he would not give a fuck. He's going to take his time.
Yeah.
And he wants Eragon, Saphira, and the Varden, like, more than he cares about any of that
Yeah.
stuff. So Paolini says some other things in this AMA, but there are some spoilers for the whole series.
Ooh.
So maybe don't look at that. So I like save this reference until we finish all of the books.
Okay.
Because he does explain that more deeply.
Okay.
But
Ooh,
I just
I'm
wanted to say that.
excited. Easter egg.
Yeah. Finally, I would add that I personally like this choice. It makes sense. Galbatorix is so mysterious and really leans on the scary movie strategy
Yeah.
of showing less to let the mind make up something individually terrifying
Oh, yeah.
for the watcher, as we are better at scaring ourselves, right? Than letting other people scare us. And
Yes, and when you make up stuff about Galbatorix, it's fun. You should try it.
Yeah. We would never do that. I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but this is one of the things that the haters are all upset about that I actually actively disagree on.
Yes, I do think that's a good, fun strategy. I like to read a villain who I'm just like, oh shit, he seems competent, he seems crazy, he seems scary.
Yeah, and which leads to the whole other thing about old Gal.
Yes.
For all you haters who are the Galbatorix was right camp, heavy air quotes,
right,
or spout that Galbatorix was not a bad guy, he's just misunderstood.
Oh, cool.
I'll just say that starting any war by killing an ally, magically enslaving a sentient creature, doing a light genocide on the same creatures,
Yep.
and teaming up with murderously angry spirits trapped in human host bodies.
Right.
Not a good look
No,
for the argument.
Pretty tough.
Yeah, and on top of that, the mutilation, death cults, and
God.
human slave trade are not great looks for his
Just
government.
the typical running of his empire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like comparing people and governments to like Hitler and Nazis is sometimes like a cheap shot in an argument. But like Gal is literally, as in from the text, literally Hitler.
Yes.
Like he just is Hitler. He behaves like Hitler. He uses propaganda like Hitler.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of the same ideas as the guy.
Yeah, so this line of, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And on that note, begone, haters!
Oh, to where this time? To whence, Dane?
I sent you to the deepest parts of the ocean.
Oh, there'll be ocean haters. Maybe Bloodgarm will go down and join him when he gets his...
Bloodgarm will go and find you guys later. But that's all I got.
Yeah.
That was a little bit more crunchy than normal, but I think some of this stuff is starting to get, there's a lot to dive into.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
and I like how much what is in the text is kind of allowing us to make our own kind of conjectures, develop your own headcanon. For me, that's one of the fun things about reading fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think I know I definitely tend to err on the side of like my headcanon will justify any inconsistencies in the writing. But I have a really easy time, I think, in a lot of cases thinking of things that like, well, that makes enough sense to me and it fits with all the stuff that's there. And now that's how I picture this thing. It might be one of the things that like keeps me from being mad about stuff.
Yeah, I think it's one of your strengths actually as a reader. I think the people who enjoy reading the most either let things go and continue to enjoy what they can from a story, right?
Yeah.
Or like you just come up with crazy.
Just make shit up.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm the opposite in a lot of ways. A lot of times I'll be like, well, I liked it, but there was this one part.
Yeah.
This has a special place in my heart though, and like I've done a lot of moving stuff around sometimes to like, this all makes sense.
I think I could get there. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of this makes sense to me, but yeah, I think it's a strength of yours, Jacqui.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a fun time doing it. I'm just at heart a kook, an imaginative little kook.
Yeah, which is really closer to like our cursed wizard baby, imaginative little kook.
Oh no!
But you do have some queen president things as well. So
I have a lot of things in common with a lot of people.
But if you meld those
Mostly
two,
the cursed witch baby.
but if you meld those two, are you more of an Angela?
Oh, well, yeah, I could kind of see
I
that.
could feel
That
that.
is kind of the midpoint in some ways.
Yeah.
A less evil witch baby with like the competence of queen president. With
And a cat.
With a cat, yes. Do have a cat. Yeah. Maybe I'm just Angela.
Was that just a long-winded way of me calling you a witch?
That feels right. Yeah, that feels like a good
That's
note
not what I meant.
to wrap up on. Witches are fun.
They're fun.
That's not an insult.
Oh, sorry.
Unless you meant it as one.
No. That's what I was like. I didn't mean it as
Dane.
an insult.
Take the life preserver I'm throwing.
Okay, we have to go now. Thank you for listening. Make sure to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Support on Patreon, and check out our social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram. If you have any questions or just want to write to us about the podcast, we'd love to hear from you, and you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com.
Yes, send us which characters you think we're each the most like. Send us an email. We want to know.
I got a feeling I'm going to get a lot of Albrechts.
I feel so right for you.
Oh, no.
If you do want to keep pace and read along with us, on the next episode, we'll be covering Chapter 44, Butting Heads, through Chapter 48, Souls of Stone.
I wonder what that's about.
Is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be. Thanks for catching our show.